He might have pulled it off, too, if Angela hadn't been so sharp-eyed or suspicious. She stepped him halfway to the elevator, opened his portfolio, and took out the book he'd stashed away. She leafed through it silently, then handed it to John, who did the same. Both of them looked at Professor with calm, cool, oddly pleased eyes. Well, I don't know, but I think this may be a violation of the rules, Professor. Taking books from the library without checking them out first. Shame, shame. She deliberately opened the first page and read, "It was the best of times. It was the worst of times." And then flipped carefully through, stopping at random spots to read lines of text. It all sounded right to Claire. She flinched when Angela pushed the book at her. Read. Where, anywhere. Claire recited a few lines in a flattering voice from page 229. A Tale of Two Cities. Let me guess, Professor, a first edition. Mint condition. Angela has unplucked it out of Claire's hand. I think the Professor has a nice retirement plan. Composed of screwing us over on our rightful profits. Huh? He didn't look quite so dumb as that. Got all those degrees and stuff. That's just paper smarts. You never can tell about what's really in their heads until you open them up. The two of them were talking like he wasn't even there. Professor Wilson's pale skin had a sweaty gleam on it now. A moment of weakness, he said. I really do apologize. It won't ever happen again, I swear that to you. Apology accepted. Angela said and lunged forward, planted her hand on his chest, and knocked him flat on the ground. And by the way, I believe you. She grabbed his wrist, raised it to her mouth, and paused to strip off his gold wristwatch band, and tossed it on the floor as it rolled. Claire's stricken eyes caught sight of the symbol on the watch face. A triangle. Delta? Her shock broke out the sound of Professor's scream. Grown men shouldn't scream like that. It just wasn't right. Fright made her angry, and she dropped her book bag, took the canister off her shoulder, and yanked off the top. Then she threw liquid nitrogen all over Angela's back. When John turned on her, snarling, she splashed whatever was left at his face, aiming for his eyes. Wilson rolled to his feet as Angela collapsed, shrieking and thrashing. John reached out for him, but she'd managed to hurt him too. She missed. Wilson grabbed his satchel and got her book bag. They ran for the elevator. A very surprised Professor, someone she didn't recognize, was standing there, open-mouthed. Wilson yelled at him to stand aside, leapt into the cage, and pressed the down button so frantically Claire was afraid it would snap or stick or something. The doors rolled shut, and the elevator began to fall. Claire tried to get her breathing under control, but it was no good. She was about to hyperventilate. Still, she was doing better than the Professor. He looked awful. His face was as grey as his hair, and he was breathing in shallow, hard gasps. Oh dear, she said weakly. That wasn't good. And then he slowly collapsed down the wall of the elevator until he was sitting in position, legs splayed loosely. Professor? Claire lunged forward and over at him. Heart, she panted, and then made a choking sound. She loosened his tie. That didn't seem to help. Listen, my house. Bookshelf. Black cover. Go. Professor, relax. Okay, no. Can't let them have it. Bookshelf. Black. His eyes got very wide, and his back arched, and she heard him make an awful noise, and then he just died. Nothing dramatic about it. No big speeches, no music swelling to tell her how to feel about it. It was just gone. And even though she pressed her shaking fingers to his neck, she knew she wouldn't feel anything because there was something different about him. He was like a rubber doll, not a person. The elevator doors opened. Claire gasped, grabbed her books and the empty silver canister and sprinted down the blank cinder block hallway to the end, where a fire door opened into bright afternoon sunlight. She stood there for a few long seconds, just shaking and gasping and crying, and then tried to think where to go. Angela John thought her name was Newberg, which was good. She supposed not so good for Newberg, if one existed. But they'd find out who she was eventually. She needed to get home before that happened. Bookshelf, black cover. Professor Wilson had been in that room for 7 years sorting through books, probably slipping out those he thought might be worth something in the black market. What if? No, it couldn't be. Except what if it was? What if a year ago or 5 years ago Professor Wilson had found that book the vampires were so intent on having, and decided to hang on to it for a rainy day? After all, she'd basically planning to do the same thing. Only for her it was already stormy weather. She needed his address. It wasn't far to the Communication Arts Building, and she ran as much of the way as she could before the pain in her still bruised ankle and still raw back made her slow down. 2 flights of steps brought her to the offices, and she passed up Professor Wilson's closed unlocked office to stop next to the cluttered desk out in the open between the corridors. The nameplate read Vivian Sampson, but everyone just called her Dragon Lady, and the woman sitting behind it had earned her name. She was old, fat, and legendarily bad-tempered. There was no smoking in all university buildings, but the Dragon Lady had an overflowing ashtray in the corner of her desk, a glowing cigarette hanging out of the corner of her red-painted lips, beehive hair straight out of old movies. She had a computer, but it wasn't turned on, and as far as Claire could tell from the 2-inch long, bright red nails, the Dragon Lady didn't type either. She ignored Claire and kept on reading the magazine open in front of her. Excuse me? Claire asked. She felt sticky with sweat from what had happened at the library. The Dragon Lady turned a page in her magazine. I'm on break. The red-clawed hand took the cigarette out of the red-painted mouth for a trip to the ashtray to shed some excess. Not even supposed to be here today. Damn grad students. Come back in half an hour. But no buts. I'm on break. Shoo. But Professor Wilson sent me to get something from his house, but he didn't give me the address. Please. She slapped the magazine. Oh, for God's sakes. I'm going to wring his neck when he gets back here. She grabbed a card from the holder on her desk and pitched it at Claire. If you're some nutcase, it's not my problem. You tell His Highness that if he wants to roll around with undergrads, he can damn well remember to tell them his own damn address from now on. Got it? Got it. Claire said in a very small voice, roll around with. She wasn't going to think about that. Not at all. Thank you. The Dragon Lady puffed a cloud of smoke out of both nostrils and raised eyebrows plucked into more of a suggestion than an actual form. You're a polite one. Go on, get out of here before I remember I'm supposed to be off today. Claire escaped, clutching the card in her sweaty fingers.